This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
No matter how much traveling you've done, you probably haven't done as much as Randy Williams, a.k.a. Ramblin Randy. He recently traveled to the Central Asian country of Turkmenistan, which means that he has now visited all 193 countries observed by the United Nations. Randy is now back home in San Diego, and he joins us via Zoom. Hi, Randy.
Great to be on the show today. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being on the program with us. When did this wanderlust begin for you traveling, and when did you finally decide, I'm going to visit everywhere?
I wish I could remember that exact day that I decided I wanted to visit every country in the world. But my first experience traveling, I actually didn't have the bug. I went on cruises with my parents, and they were nice enough to take me along. But I really didn't. I didn't get the fever when I was going places like Rome, and I was there at Trevi Fountain, which was certainly beautiful. But I was packed, sandwiched in like sardines with hundreds of other tourists and a lot of Americans. And I never thought that was amazing until my first solo trip to Brazil at 26 years old. That kind of changed things. My first goal was to see every country in South and Central America by the time I turned 40, and seeing some bizarre places like Suriname and French Guiana, and then some kind of dangerous, risky places like Venezuela. But in short, visiting a few places that tourists don't normally go. That seemed to really kickstart my passion and fuel me to see every place in the world, including, once again, these places that you don't see tourists at, including South Sudan and places like Iraq and Libya, and some of the places that earlier in my life I would never even have dreamed of even thinking about visiting.
Well, what was it about? I think I said you said Brazil. What was it about Brazil that kickstarted this journey?
People ask me my favorite country. That's probably my most asked question is, hey, what's your favorite country of them all? I always say Brazil because it's the only place that I actually gave up everything for and moved to. At 30 years old, I quit my job and I ended up moving to Brazil. As a kid, I'd always been enamored with the Latin culture. Always had the girls I had crushes on in second and third grade. They were, always of Hispanic descent, and I love the music and the food, etc. It was in Spanish class when I was about 20 years old. My amazing best teacher in the world, Mrs. Houston, she'd tell travel stories, and she told a travel story about how much she loved Brazil. And I went online and I Googled Rio de Janeiro, and just that first vision of Copacabana Beach, with the beautiful bay and the Jesus on the mountain, Sugarloaf Mountain, it spoke to me in pictures, and I said, I have to go there. And I went there. It was the 10 most amazing days of my life. The people, the culture, the foods, the music, the landscape, everything. It checked every single box. And 10 days later, when I was at the airport ready to go home, I was literally, not an exaggeration, I was literally in tears. I was crying. I didn't know that one could fall in love with an actual country. So that was the beginning of my love affair with Brazil and also traveling the world.
You spent 10 days in Brazil that first trip. When you decided to visit all of the world, what generally was the usual amount of time you spent? What was the longest? What was the shortest?
I think the average is probably about maybe 2 nights. The shortest would definitely be some cruise stops. I wanted to check off a bunch of the Caribbean, a lot of Caribbean islands out there. So I used a cruise for about 5 or 6 of them. In that aspect, you'd have, maybe 7 or 8 hours only in a country. The longest I've stayed besides Brazil, probably maybe 5 or 6 days, not because I wanted to, but because the flight schedules or, some of these places only have one flight in every week.
When you're doing these trips, have you learned over the period of time what's the best way to travel? What's the best way to pack? What not to pack? You must become an expert at this.
I think I like to think I get better every time with every trip, but I still make amateur mistakes like leaving things behind on the plane. I did that on one of my last trips this year. I'm like, okay, 192 countries and you're still leaving your jacket on the plane. You got to get better at this. But my number one lesson that I've learned that I share with others is just packing light. I started, checking in a bag, and then I realized, hey, don't check in a bag. Now, take a roller bag and a backpack. And I've graduated all the way up into being able to take just one backpack for a trip. there's not a lot of secrets there. Just, do laundry, while you're moving around, and you can wear, for example, I don't know if you know this, but there are actual companies that sell travel clothes. And these clothes are meant to be worn multiple days without stinking up. They're water and odor resistant. So as gross as this sounds, I may just take one pair of pants on a week-long trip, maybe do a quick wash in the hotel. But by traveling with just one bag, it allows you such amazing freedom. Besides not having the airline or airports lose your bags or theft, I've had people steal things from the bags that I've checked in. Besides avoiding all those catastrophes, it's so liberating to be able to land in a new country, grab your backpack from the overhead, and hit the ground running, especially if you don't have a lot of time there. Waiting around an hour for a bag, to me, that's wasting precious time.
How long from when you first decided you're going to visit all the countries of the world to when recently finishing that with Turkmenistan, how long a period of time or how many years did that take?
About a decade. Now, granted, I was already up to about 35 countries when I said, okay, I want to see every country now. So, but about a decade ago, I said, you know what, I want to see every country in the world. And, foolishly, I had that idea after a 2-week trip to Europe where I was able to see 7 countries very quickly. Well, obviously, you look at a map of Europe, they're all close together. They're all in the EU. They're all extremely easy to see very quickly. So I didn't really know what I was biting off, which was a much bigger challenge, especially traveling places like the Pacific and countries in Africa where they can be very spread apart and very hard to get to, especially just the lack of direct flights.
In all your travels, what was the one thing that was an aha moment that you learned about whatever place you've been to? And also, during the course of your journeys, what's the biggest thing you learned about yourself?
Well, the first question, the biggest aha moment was, and I'll just put it bluntly, after 9/11, a young man growing up in America listening to a lot of talk radio, I was convinced that all Muslims wanted to kill us infidels, and that Islam was this scary thing. And I had to face that when I traveled. And my very first Islamic country was Senegal, and I was so terrified going in and landing and seeing a bunch of black men in robes and caps and beards running around the airport. I said, boy, what a mistake I made. Am I even going to get out of here alive? That was very ignorant and just not, there was no truths to that. And 24 hours in, I was loving Africa and having the time of my life and meeting my first Muslim friends for the very first time. At the end of that trip, I was traveling home in my own robe and cap because I just thought they were so darn comfortable. And so now, yeah, it completely changed my mind. That was my biggest aha moment. And at the same time, that's what I've learned about myself. Tolerance, not just tolerance and respect for other people's cultures, but a genuine love for every culture out there. Travel's made me a better person. And, no amount of preaching to me or finger wagging to me about how I was wrong would have changed my mind. I had to go out there and experience myself. I'm a better person for it. And I just wish that everyone can travel. They don't have to see every country in the world, but even if they can just get out of their comfort zone, face their fears, I truly believe travel makes you a better person when you come home.
Now, you said you had a perceived danger when you went there, but that wasn't the case. Was there any place where you were in danger?
That's a great question. The other lesson I learned, both a misconception and a truth, was one of the other main lessons I learned is that the world is not as scary as the news portrays. It's just not. Even war-torn countries like Syria and Libya, you go there and you go to the Central Park and you see kids with balloons and couples walking hand in hand eating popcorn. The world definitely is not as scary as the news portrays it to be, except for one country. And I love that country and I love the people there. But Somalia is indeed a failed state and extremely dangerous to visit if you are a foreigner of a lighter complexion. There's just a lot of danger there, including, unfortunately, kids on the ground looking for foreigners, and they see someone like me, and they send a text to their bosses and they say, hey, we've got an American, or we've got a foreigner, or we've got a white man at the market. That's why in Somalia, I had 5 armed guards, a bulletproof truck, beautiful place, amazing people. but a lot of bad stuff happening, a lot of bombs going off. I hope Somalia figures its problems out because there's a lot of potential there, and most people there are good, but absolutely dangerous for a foreigner to visit.
You, if I'm not mistaken, you also went to the Antarctic, which doesn't have a country. So you've been to more than the 193 locations per se.
I've definitely been to more than 193. There's a lot of territories and disputed territories. I've yet to visit Antarctica. It's on my list.
Okay.
I may hit it next. I may hit it next year. I'm a little scared of the seasickness that can happen on the Drake Passage. I've heard it can be really bad. So I've got to psych myself up and figure out how I'm going to do that. But the seventh continent is definitely on my list.
Is there any place else besides Antarctica that you haven't been?
Oh, there's a million places I haven't been, territories, etc. You look at how many territories the UK has and France, there's, islands like Montserrat that I'd love to visit. So, yeah, look, my travel list is endless, and I will be traveling as long as my legs and arms continue to work.
And I know you travel a lot because you enjoy traveling, but is there some place you like to go to simply get away? In other words, a simple vacation, just to get away and relax. Where would that be? Or is that home for you?
It's funny you say probably not. I'll tell you this. You mentioned the word relax. This is what I'm really looking forward to. This is what I'm most looking forward to. My travel career over the past 10 years and this mission, because I work full time and have limited vacation time, has been very hurried and very rushed. So, for example, I may take 2 weeks and I think my record was seeing 14 countries in 21 days. And although I enjoyed it, it's exhausting and tough. I am most looking forward to, when you say relaxing, I'm most looking forward to going back to my favorite places, but instead of only spending 1 or 2 nights there, actually unpacking my clothes in the hotel drawers, sleeping late, taking a deep breath, walking around, having multiple days, even weeks, to enjoy one country and get entrenched in their culture and travel deeper. To me, that will actually provide me with a lot of relaxation as well as stimulation. I'm really looking forward to that.
You mentioned your day job. We should mention the fact that you were in radio. Give us a plug for your station and what you do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I host besides working for some local stations here in San Diego, I host a national love songs and dedication show called Slow Jams. And you can get more information at slowjams.com. My show airs currently in about 220 cities across America, from New York to San Francisco and Chicago and everywhere in between. Slowjams.com is the website for that. And my project coming up is I've launched my own country. I'm the Sultan of the Republic of Slowjamastan, which is an 11-acre sovereign nation located about an hour south of Palm Springs, California. If you think I'm nuts, wait till you see the website. It's slowjamastan.org. We have about 1,600 citizens, our own currency, passport, national anthem, border. We have a border fence and laws.
Fantastic. The People's Republic of Slowjamastan.
Yes, sir.
Randy, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Thanks for having me. I love your show. It was a blast. And hey, keep traveling.
Randy Williams, a.k.a. Ramblin Randy. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0720, and you'll find the link to both of Randy's sites.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.